Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Secure Talk. Secure Talk is brought to you by Adequest, your cybersecurity and compliance partner. My name is Mark Schreiner, and I'll be your host for this episode of Secure Talk. Today, we're going to be talking with Mr. Steve Ginty, who is the Director of Threat Intelligence at RiskIQ. And we're going to be talking a little bit about his job. We're going to talk about what RiskIQ does, and get on to some of the current news and most recent hacks, and talk about what RiskIQ could do in those situations. But first off, let me welcome Steve. Steve, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Great. Where are you, by the way?
I live in Memphis, Tennessee. So I've been here for almost 8 years now in December, and moved from the DC area before that, and originally from outside of Boston. So I've been roaming all over the country these days.
You got to get to the left hand side of the country once in a while.
It's exactly right. Pre-COVID, I was making a lot of trips out that way, and so hopefully that comes back into the rotation in 2022.
I hear a lot of nice things about Memphis. Are things opening up? I mean, can you go out and
it's getting a lot better. We've always had the last 2 years with this, our spikes have been in July when people go indoors because of the heat. And so now we're seeing into the fall a lot more outdoor activity. Winter doesn't really take place until January around here, so it's getting a little more open, and things are getting better.
Well, I'm in Seattle, and we pretty much have the opposite problem, because in the summertime, everybody wants to be outside, and we're all spread out. And in the wintertime, it gets cold, dark, and rainy. In fact, we had something recently called a bomb cyclone, a rainstorm. And so you're pretty much stuck inside with everybody else. And it's the cold season, which makes it, everybody says, is it a cold? Or is it cold? Is it cold?
Yeah, right. So all the new worries, right?
Exactly. Well, hey, let me ask you, Director of Threat Intelligence, what does that mean?
Sure. Great question. So for RiskIQ, I've started to take on a newer role as the Director of Threat Intelligence, and my main focus is understanding how we can implement our intelligence to better help and assist our customers. So I've been working in a larger, I would say, strategy role to figure out ways to better utilize the data we're collecting and the great work of our research and intelligence teams to really help organizations solve threat and vulnerability problems inside of their enterprise.
Okay, so does that landscape evolve? I mean, traditionally there are certain signals that you look at to kind of monitor your threat landscape. But is it evolving? Are you constantly figuring out maybe new techniques, different? Obviously, an attack surface that is probably expanding exponentially. But tell me a little bit about the evolution of that.
Yeah, I think it has. It's certainly evolved as the company has been in this space since 2009, and kind of leading in the attack surface management space, and also the threat intelligence space. So, the problems of this year are a lot different than obviously 18 months ago, and even 3 years ago. And so, I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing is that change is constant for organizations, and it seems like that it's accelerating. If you look at enterprise organizations pre-COVID, everybody was talking about digital transformation and hybrid cloud environments and making that kind of move. And COVID-19 was a forcing function for a lot of organizations in accelerating those plans significantly, and also making people realize that they needed to move to effectively operate in this new hybrid remote environment. And so. I think we're constantly looking at ways we can improve our collection, our telemetry, our detection capabilities to help organizations understand, what their attack surface looks like. And so, as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, that was a lot of on-premise infrastructure. It was a lot more web focused, let's say. And now we've really started to see a switch into understanding, where are your remote services, where are your remote login capabilities, where's your legacy IT that's constantly getting pounded by vulnerability researchers and threat actors exploiting new vulnerabilities, and how do we help organizations understand where those assets exist in their environment, respond in a more rapid fashion, and also make better risk decisions because they have the data available to them to make those decisions on.
Well, I want to drill down into that in a second, but just a couple more high-level questions. First off, I mean, how do you keep abreast of the latest threat intelligence techniques and trends and threats? I mean,
Yep.
where do you go?
It's hard, right? There's something new to learn on a daily basis for me, for RiskIQ's analysts, for really anybody in the industry. So we don't pretend to keep up with with everything all the time, but we have a lot of resources. Different databases for vulnerabilities. Obviously, NVD and their RSS feeds are key in understanding new vulnerabilities that are coming out. From a threat perspective, we have a big operation to scrape and ingest open source intelligence from a broad variety of sources to ensure that we have visibility into new attacks that are happening. And then our analysts are all plugged into the community in different ways and trying to understand what the latest and greatest threat or vulnerability is, what's top of mind for our customers, and from a situational awareness perspective. For me, in managing all of this data and trying to understand the landscape, I use Twitter, and that's
I hear that. I hear that a lot. You know what I mean? So you're not alone. But go ahead.
It's a good additional kind of lens on what people are talking about, and obviously it's a skewed lens to a specific audience, but it's a very interesting lens because you see the kind of leading indicators of what is catching on or what that wave may be that organizations may be coming to ask you about in the coming days or weeks as different topics start to trend. And as more organizations are online, you have a lot of these government organizations now online tweeting, having a public presence, and therefore you start to you're able to ingest a lot of information and kind of keep that situational awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you talk about helping your customers be aware of their vulnerable assets, data, and at the same time, it's all about awareness for you. I mean, you have a Twitter feed, and you say, "Oh my gosh, this isn't on our radar. Maybe this is something we should take a look at." So, awareness is super, super important. Last high-level question before we start talking about some of the specific solutions that you provide. But from what I understand, you were recently acquired by Microsoft.
That is correct. So we are now a fully owned subsidiary as of August, and so we are Microsoft employees and going on that journey as a group, and it's exciting to see.
So how will that affect in terms of usually Microsoft makes a security related acquisition and then they will fold that into the Microsoft Security Suite. Is that the plan, and will will RiskIQ not be going to market directly, or is that to be determined, or how will that work?
It's a bit to be determined, to be honest with you. But as of right now, we will be selling our services in a go forward motion for the next 12 months. And so it's not the strategy isn't to just collapse the capabilities into functionality in the near term in the Microsoft ecosystem, but we are in our planning stages now. And so we're deciding, where this information and where our capabilities and products can best provide value to the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So a bit of a TBD, but we're in that process to understand it now.
Maybe a good place to kick off the discussion about the specific tools that you provide is, from a Microsoft point of view, is RiskIQ providing that they didn't currently have? Because Microsoft has a pretty comprehensive security suite these days. So where were you helping?
Yeah, I think as a part of the acquisition, one of the areas that really highlighted RiskIQ's capability was the Microsoft Exchange vulnerabilities that were announced in March of this year. And so, way back when, it seems this was announced, Microsoft announced, I think it was the first week of March, an out-of-band cycle set of patches for 4 zero-day vulnerabilities inside of on-premise Exchange servers. And as RiskIQ, we do what we normally do, and we're there to tell our customers, exactly where those assets are inside of your attack surface, what versions of Exchange you're running, and where you need to go and apply those patches. and providing that situational awareness. When that announcement came out on a Tuesday, I thought, well, this is pretty straightforward. Here we go. Everybody, go patch your Exchange servers. And what was readily apparent as Microsoft started releasing additional information was that there was a decent corpus of infrastructure that was impacted by this. So if we look at the timeline of it, I think it was by Friday of that week, as we were scanning and looking at the global presence of Exchange. Out of the 400,000 Exchange servers, we actively fingerprint on the internet in a given day. Roughly 100,000 of them were impacted still 7 days post that announcement by this vulnerability. And we started working hand in hand with colleagues on the Microsoft side to feed that data over to them to provide that global visibility of what the state of affairs was around these Exchange servers, and actively worked with them to improve our scanning technology so we could provide better information, but also proactively do outreach to organizations that were impacted. And this wasn't a motion we normally do, but understanding the severity and seeing, Microsoft put in the time to release a significant amount of patches. I think it was over 21 discrete patches for versions that had long since been out of support. We started working with our data and telemetry to proactively email on a broad scale ISPs and ASNs where we observed these IP addresses running these vulnerable Exchange servers, and really work together to drive to that that more effective patch cycle. And so I think in that next kind of 3 to 5 days, we saw a very rapid decline from about 90,000 IP addresses impacted to about 30,000. And so we were working together hand in hand to really attempt to provide global situational awareness on the incident, and also help drive to remediation. And so I think that that kind of external and global view of vulnerabilities and of not only our customers' attack surface, but what's taking place on the internet was really the driving value proposition.
That's very powerful. So let's dig in a little bit in terms of RiskIQ's core offering. Why don't, if you don't mind, explain to me, when you're having a discussion with a CISO or a CTO or head of security, what kind of questions are you asking, and what, I guess, problems are you trying to solve?
Sure. So if you look at RiskIQ, we're from our standpoint, not now as a part of Microsoft, but at the time, we consider ourselves a big data company. We do a lot of scanning and internet collection to bring this telemetry into our data set to then build products on top of it. And so the two core kind of value propositions we bring to organizations are helping you understand the threat actors that may be targeting your environment, and understanding your attack surface as it pertains to internet connected assets, so that outside in view, and where your vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and issues are that those attackers could leverage to gain access into your environment. So they're two discrete use cases, and I like to say they're two opposite sides of the coin, right? You have to know where, what your footprint is to proactively defend it. And you have to know who is actively targeting you on a regular basis in order to prioritize how you defend that footprint. And so when we go and talk to CISOs and security managers, our conversations are in both of those veins. Do you know where what you look like to an attacker from the outside? Do you know where the low-hanging fruit is of vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that you should be actively managing on a daily basis to ensure that you're not a target? And do you know the threat actors, and do you have the right data available to enrich incidents and alerts inside of your security products to inform you and provide context about maybe who is targeting you?
And I bet you oftentimes they say, yeah, maybe. I don't know if you're going to get a definitive yes or no on that, right? And so how do you elaborate on that conversation? I mean, what's the next step?
Correct. And so they're both problems that organizations have grappled with for a long time, right? We've stood up security operations groups and incident response and threat intel teams to try to solve this "who is targeting me" problem. We have vulnerability and patch management programs that are really that are trying to consistently ensure that things are up to date and that your IT infrastructure is in good working order. But this goes back to our earlier conversation around visibility, right? There's a lot to manage. An attack surface is very dynamic nowadays for organizations, and so
can you give some examples? Very
sure.
specific.
Just looking at the way things have changed for enterprise organizations as we think about the move from on-prem and kind of owning, the IT infrastructure to SaaS platforms and cloud providers. You still own the infrastructure; it's still part of your critical business operations. But those IP addresses, that the information, where those things reside, may not be as static as they used to be, and therefore, organizations have a hard time keeping up with, with where their cloud assets are, or what their cloud, what's their visibility into the cloud assets they have. The flip side of that is we're seeing, the buzzwords of IoT and OT, but a lot of these industrial control systems and Internet of Things devices, organizations have a lot more things that are connected to the internet that they have to manage, and those things come with vulnerabilities, or maybe with weaker security than expected, that can be leveraged into avenues into an organization. I think there was a access control system last year that was to keycard access into buildings, all connect Wi-Fi enabled, so you can manage it appropriately. Also being rounded up into a large-scale botnet for DDoS attacks because there were vulnerabilities inside of that system. And so it's this very dynamic environment of things being connected to the internet that we're really trying to help organizations manage.
Things being connected, and then also companies being more interconnected with other companies, with their vendors, their supply chains, which I know that you've spoken about the SolarWinds hack or the issue with them, which also kind of goes to your point, where it's just the landscape of in terms of where we're operating with all the different devices, different apps, and all our vendors. It just makes things so much more complicated. In the case of in the case of SolarWinds, how would RiskIQ be able to help?
It's a great question. So we helped our customers in a reactive way in this scenario, and we had a lot of people come to us as this news broke and said, "Are we running this system? Is it in our environment? Do I have to worry about this?" And at the time, our research team very quickly spun up detection signatures for SolarWinds and the versions of SolarWinds that were running on the internet. And quickly, within a 48-hour period, we were able to scan the internet and understand the global implications of where these systems were, but also the local implications to our customers. And so, in this scenario, while reactive, it was, we were able to provide our customers with situational awareness very quickly around, are they impacted by this, by this third-party breach, and if so, how serious could it be? This was very similar with the Kaseya attack. Whereas Kaseya's infrastructure, where do I have to worry about this, managed security service provider? Is it impacting me? And those are a lot of the questions we help our customers answer on a daily basis. But we can also go one step further, and we can start to understand the dependencies in your infrastructure. And so we can map these types of things out, more in advance, and give you insight into maybe who your top dependencies are for web pages, for infrastructure, and give you that purview in advance so you can manage it more proactively.
Excellent. I'm just curious, if you look at different sectors, for example, financial services or the government, do you see different threat landscapes depending on which industry they're in?
Yes, I think it's blurring a little bit more than in years past. But certainly, in the financial sector, you have a lot more worry about credit card skimming and kind of a fraud to their kind of user base. There's always kind of that nation state and ransomware kind of factor for them. But there's really tailored towards defending against fraud and abuse. And you look at government, obviously, is always going to be very much tailored towards nation state type activity and cyber espionage. But all of that's blurring a little bit, and the lines are getting a little blurry. So if we look at timelines around attacks and vulnerabilities and the threat actors that are leveraging them, some of these very critical vulnerabilities that would be announced inside of Palo Alto Global Protect or Confluence or any of these kind of remote code execution vulnerabilities that were very commonly used by let's go with higher end nation state actors. You're seeing those quickly get adopted across a broad swath of cyber actors, and we can see with I think it was the end of August, early September, where Confluence had a remote code execution vulnerability inside of, Atlassian had the vulnerability inside of their Confluence server. That time to active exploitation was very quick. I think it was a 7-day window between the patch being announced and ransomware actors and crypto miners, and these kind of cyber criminals actively using that vulnerability as a part of their attack campaigns. And that compressed timeline is definitely new in our visibility. And I think you're seeing that kind of cadence continue. With most vulnerabilities as they're announced. Threat actors are very quickly adopting these vulnerabilities, and so you don't have as much time to respond as maybe you would. You can't kind of accept the risk and hope that that maybe your patch management cycle will keep up with it at times for a lot of these more severe vulnerabilities.
And what are you seeing then in terms of different countries being attacked? I mean, so for example, do these hackers do they recognize soft targets and will go after perhaps less sophisticated geographies, or is it just across the board wherever they can find a target?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're, from a ransomware perspective, it used to be kind of targets of opportunity, right? And while it still is at times, they're more, I don't want to say thoughtful, but they're more meticulous in how they approach their target now, right? As opposed to 5 years ago of launch as many phishing emails into the wild and hope you get someone who clicks and you get a couple $100 and you get order of large numbers. They're using these vulnerabilities in key networking devices or weaknesses in remote desktop protocol and things like that inside of organizations to gain a foothold, understand the landscape inside of those organizations, and then ransom the crown jewels or much more interesting data to lead to a much higher payout. And so you're seeing that kind of evolution of a broad approach of law of large numbers to what the industry is calling kind of big game hunting, where they're going after targets that they know can pay and can pay at a higher dollar amount, and that's certainly a big evolution. To the soft target question, I think we're seeing that with third party and supply chain, right? We've always seen nation state actors target kind of organizations where they can get a foothold and then get to their primary objective. In my past career, I did security for a defense contractor, and so defense contractors were a great gateway into the government. I think with SolarWinds, you're now seeing that come down another level. Who are the third-party providers? Who are the IT managers? Who are the SaaS platforms that they can target that may be easier to gain a foothold or maybe more fruitful when you do gain a foothold? How can I target one organization and get broad access to many? We saw that in SolarWinds. We saw that in Kaseya. Microsoft is seeing that with the Nobelium actors targeting, the cloud service providers that around email. And so I think you're starting to see that evolution, certainly.
Earlier, you mentioned open source intelligence. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think nowadays you're seeing a lot of organizations, blogging publicly, putting out reporting, publicly discussing attack campaigns and actor campaigns that they're observing. And so, not only is there interesting intelligence to be gained from the data that RiskIQ collects, there's interesting intelligence to be gained from our peer companies, other organizations, government and non-government, that are producing information about attacks that we can ingest and leverage. One, we can ingest it at scale and help our customers with situational awareness so that they don't have to manage that process, which is not an easy process to keep up with. But two, everybody in this ecosystem has kind of unique visibility into attacks or campaigns. And therefore, there's oftentimes a scenario where we can add additional context to the market or our customers around these attacks that other organizations have researched and published on, that provide additional insight based on the telemetry we collect and the information that we have available to us. And so, it's a two-pronged effort. There's a lot of good information out there, and we want to make sure we capture that and include it in both our detection and collection. But also, we want to use the great research that other people have put in to help us more effectively mine our data, so that we can better defend our customers and the broader ecosystem.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you're out there trying to go it all alone, it's going to be a little bit difficult. But you got to share that signal, share that intel. Let me ask you a couple of advice type questions. Let's say you're a CISO and you're going into a Fortune 500 enterprise job, and it's your first day, week, month on the job. What are your top 3 concerns?
That's a good question. I don't know if I am uniquely suited to answer it fully, but based on having never held the role, so first I would be probably sweating a bit.
But you've talked, I would be.
As I've entered that role, I would be, that's a lot to tackle, right? It's a very heavy job to hold in the industry today. For me, obviously, in the role that we have here at RiskIQ and in the visibility we have, my top worry is really, having the appropriate situational awareness to know what I should be worried about, because there's so much, there's so many different threats and vulnerabilities and things that organizations have to ingest that are being publicly talked about. How do you effectively prioritize that in any organization? We hope we are trying, we're helping organizations do that as RiskIQ, but I think for me, going into a new organization day one, it's what's the lay of the land, what's the landscape, and what's the history? Give me the backstory. Who has targeted you? Who, what have been the biggest issues and breaches that you've dealt with? I really, past is prologue. Someone who has targeted you previously will most likely target you again. And therefore, you can use that information to inform future risk decisions.
Excellent. And another advice question. This might be a little easier for somebody who's looking. Maybe they're in college right now, but they're very much interested in a career in cybersecurity. And of course, cybersecurity is a very broad area. So, but you can focus on the areas that you're most familiar with. What advice would you give?
That is a good question. I think it's pertinent. I think the advice one I would give is there's no right way into the industry, right? I'm a prime example. I have a finance undergraduate degree. I have a master's in public policy. I think at one point I swore to never get into IT, and here I am, and it's very interesting, and I love what I get to do. So there's no kind of one right track getting into the industry. For me, it was I like investigating and digging into things and getting answers, and so that's kind of why I went into finance, is digging into numbers and formulating answers based off those numbers. I was able to apply that kind of to an IT security role and to an investigative role, and that's kind of how I moved into the threat intel and kind of incident response vein in my career. And so, one, there's no right way to enter the industry. Two, there are so many good resources online and people to follow, either on Twitter or blogs or research that they're putting out. That if you're interested in a specific area of the industry, really dig into it and start to follow those people that are producing content and providing free training and different insights, because I'm learning something new every day from my peers, from our junior and senior researchers. No one is ever going to know everything in this industry, and there's just always something to learn.
That's some excellent advice. Appreciate that. Let me ask you, we're going to wrap this up here, but what else would you like to share about RiskIQ, and what's going to be happening in the next 6 months? What can we expect?
We're actively kind of trying to figure out how we fit into the broader Microsoft ecosystem. In the near term, we have all of our capabilities available inside of Azure Sentinel via a playbook that integrates our data and enrichment from a threat intelligence perspective and from some of our attack surface management capability into that environment. So we're already kind of starting that that better together strategy via their integration applications. So if you're interested and if you are an Azure user, that's a great place to start to understand what RiskIQ can do to help. We also have a community portal. So we allow anybody to come to community.riskiq.com and register for a free account. That gets you access to our open source intelligence extraction that I previously mentioned, to some of our unique research that our analysts are putting out, and access to the data to start your investigations and interact with the capability that RiskIQ brings. Additionally, we have a free 30-day trial inside of that account of our Illuminate platform, which is this lightweight attack surface management capability that helps organizations very quickly understand their attack surface and understand some priority areas that they can focus on to ensure that they're starting to start down this journey to manage their attack surface. So all of those resources are available to anyone who wants to come and sign up and register for an account and both start a trial and just interact with our data. And even if you don't want to purchase our services, that community portal exists for anybody to come and use.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking with you, learning about RiskIQ, and listening to your kind of takes on the threat landscape and what's going on in the industry. Wish you the best remainder of 2021, and hope to actually meet at an event in person sometime soon.
That would be really nice. I've really enjoyed the conversation today, so thank you so much for having me on.
Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.